I'll let everybody press their button that says this meeting is being recorded. So thanks for coming. So at this first Business Education SIG webinar today, what we wanted to look at from a steering committee point of view was, what's the stuff that you guys want to talk about as we move forward? We're planning for 6 weekly webinars, so one webinar every 6 weeks, and we will get the schedule out and up on our website so that people can see what's coming up. But we really wanted to find out, rather than bombarding you with things that may not be of interest, we wanted to find out what interested you. And we want to do these sessions as a conversation. So a conversation in terms of, getting your input to everything rather than just having a guest speaker and a Q&A. So, and we will do that. We will have some guest speakers from time to time, but we'll be looking at topics that interest you. Hence the reason for the Padlet. And the 4 questions: what's keeping you awake at night? What conversations are you having right now in terms of business and technology, both with your colleagues and also externally? Are you talking to businesses about what their issues are and what they're expecting graduates to come out with? Then we're interested in what you're working on as part of your scholarship or research. And finally, if there's something you'd like to work on with other people from the SIG. So we often get caught up in our own stuff. That was me for basically 15 years, trying to get my head around my own research. And it's not until about the last 5 years that I've really collaborated, and it's come out of the introduction of this Business SIG. And I've written a number of papers now with members of the SIG. It really has helped not only my profile and collaboration with people from other universities, but also to get my head around the research that that I want to be involved with and what's important to people in other universities. And it's made me feel like I'm not alone in the process. Speaking of which, Audrey, I've been told flat out 100% we have to convert last year's conference paper to a journal article, and it has to be done this year.
Great.
And it can't just be what we did last year, and I'll explain why another time.
No worries.
So, and that's the part. So Audrey and I wrote last year about a topic that's near and dear to our hearts, which is business simulations. We got a conference paper at the Ascolite conference, which was fantastic. We got lots of good feedback. And as I've done with a number of other papers, we now get to convert that into a journal article. So it really is a great discussion point. So looking at what people have put up on the critical issues, staying up to date with technology and new issues with assessment and AI. And I think that's doesn't matter whether you're in business or whether you're in any other discipline. I think those two are keeping most academics up at night. Does anybody want to discuss their thoughts around either of those two topics?
Sorry, where is that Padlet?
So there's a link in the chat.
I don't see it.
I will add the link again to go to the Padlet.
Okay, yeah, got it.
Need to bookmark this. It's already bookmarked, so that's all right. So does anybody have any thoughts about?
I'm not sure what sort of technology the person who put the comment up meant, but for us in particular, we're finding that it's not just with our LMSs, it's all the other periphery kind of things like Udoit, Panopto, it's H5P, it's all these other technologies that we're having to integrate to make our courses that so much more engaging. There's also a huge shift right now in New Zealand in particular around relational teaching and trying to really navigate that space when you've got really large cohorts of maybe 1,000 students. It's really challenging. It's very much aspirational, but how do we actually put that into effect, and how do we do that with technology in terms of engaging our students so they actually engage with the content in the LMS and then come in and engage with us, you know, given everything else that's going on with them. So some of the strategies that we're kind of having a bit of a play with at the moment, I'm designing a stage 2 course in organizational behavior and organizational theory, is kind of giving students the option of, if you do 5 of these assignments, you're going to get a C. So giving them a smorgasbord where they actually get to choose a little bit more of how they want to engage with us as academics and how they want to engage with the material and with what their aspiration is in terms of the mark that they want in the course. It's still a very much a gray area, but I'm really interested to see how it all kind of pans out. But that's kind of what I'm actually doing in relation to technology. So I'd love to hear what everybody else. Hey, Nikki, yay, hubby's finished his call. Awesome.
Yeah, he finished early, so good.
So were you the one who put the yeah, go ahead.
Put that up, yeah. So I teach accounting information systems. We phased it out about 10 years ago and then reintroduced it last year, and it obviously looks quite different. So for me, it's, you know, staying up to date with the technology required, like you say, in the teaching space. But on top of that, then what's happening in the industry and, you know, being able to understand what's happening there without being in practice at this stage. So my unit should be teaching them the latest technology, but, you know, yeah, so I find that I enjoy it. I've always enjoyed technology, but it moves so quickly at this point. Audrey, sorry, Sandra, I just wanted you mentioned something relational teaching. Is that what you called it?
That's a terminology in New Zealand. So
okay.
I'm the foreigner in the
chat
group.
because I just want to remember that relational teaching. Because we had I sit on our digital learning and teaching advisory committees, got no decision-making powers, but we act as a soundboard for ideas. And I presented Quitch to them the other day again, the gamified. And I can't quite get the IT people to be that interested in it. So I wanted to use a different lens. And I think that relational teaching speaks into, you know, that student engagement. It's not only getting the content, but it's actually engaging them.
And I think that, Nikki, one of the things you can do is that you can, and apologies everybody for being late, because I was actually doing the care pedagogy stuff through technology, which took my system out. So for example, this week I've got 1,350 students. We run an in-class situation where they do like a little in-class assessment. And as a result of that, by loading into Socrative, I can then pull down who attended and who didn't. So this morning, everyone who didn't come has got a little note saying, we miss you. Week 1's just happened. You may not be aware, there's got new assessments. We're not doing any recordings, blah, 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 blah. We understand you might have a visa problem and there's no exemptions or special considerations for that. And we're looking forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah.
Right. And that took no more than 10 minutes. So I could do it if we used a different system straight from Moodle, but we can't do that marking and everything straight in Moodle. So Socrative, literally I pulled down the sheets. My head tutor washed the data for attendance and non-attendance, and I asked her to divide it by class so that I could double, triple check. And so we've just sent out 500 emails.
Wow.
Just on 3 minutes, because it was all prepped and ready to go, blind copied, all the same message, we just miss you. And in a
Yeah.
minute, we will send individual results to the remaining 850 by class, by what they did, with feedback, saying it's great that you came. Here's some tips of how to do better, blah, 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 from there. So I find that I don't have to wait on university technology. There are so many technology things that I can do that actually will make life easier and better.
Mm. You're
So
getting
just
responses now on your email.
Yeah.
500.
yeah, just catching Lynn up. So we've got a couple of comments on the Padlet. So we were sort of taking discussion as to why people put those things there and what their thoughts were behind the comments, even if it wasn't their comment. So so we're looking at the critical issues that, what's keeping you up at night, and predictably staying up to date with changes in technology and new issues with assessment and AI. I think it doesn't matter whether you're business or not, that's keeping people up at night. Nikki, I just wanted to say, you're teaching accounting information systems. The first course I taught back in 2001 was business information systems, and literally we taught Word, Excel, and PowerPoint.
Yeah.
There was an accounting information systems course here as well. And that also has gone by the way. That doesn't
Yeah.
exist. It will be interesting to see what actually comes forward with our merger discussions in terms of what's going to go in the curriculum. But I
Yeah.
think if there's not an information systems course of some description, we're doing our kids a disservice. So
Yeah, no, I agree. And
Well,
it is an interesting unit to be involved in. It's exciting, but sometimes daunting for me as well, how to get it interesting yet
I
not too
think,
techy.
yeah, I think that the real thing of keeping up is one of those things of being really discerning about what you subscribe to. As
Mm,
somebody who plays very seriously in the AI and integrity space, I had somebody this week say to me, so have you kept up with all this stuff on prompting? And I went back and said, if I kept up with every change on prompting, I would go insane. I'm much more interested in the rules of prompting than using somebody else's prompt.
mm,
And they went, oh, and I said, if you're playing the game of learning rules, you will drown. Playing the game of learning prompts, you will drown. Learn the rules, right? Learn how the software is changing or the system is changing so that you can write the rules and play the rules. So I think getting those right on the right list servers is really important in terms of keeping up. And the other thing is being clear on what you're seeking. So investing a half an hour on like if you go, it's that sort of that first level of learning, isn't it? We talk about the unconscious incompetence, and then we become consciously incompetent. We go, oh, I need to learn. But what is it we need to learn? And if we don't know that, we can get overwhelmed by trying to keep up. So I think that the one that I really love getting is the Rundown AI. And it tells me all the big changes. So it tells me if something's being, integrated, if something's being sold, if somebody's being kicked out, etc., etc., etc. So I get that, and that's really good. I just read the top headlines every day and go, anything there for me, yes or no. The other is just sort of general business stuff about it, right? And then I also get an industry one called TLDR AI, which is not as useful, but I just read again the top 4 lines, like what's in this, and I go, need it or don't need it, file it, because I may not need it today, but I might need it later, and I can go searching for that later through my email. But those 2 things keep me pretty informed, and then I follow a few big people in the space, right, on Twitter, etc. So they will, as long as that triangulates, that's enough for me. I can look at my Twitter feed once a day, get my Rundown AI, get my TLDR. TLDR is a little bit more annoying. It comes 2 or 3 times a day. And it is a bit annoying, right? And I'm considering whether or not it might go. But like last night, I got a great piece, actually out of IBM, and about how IBM is changing what they're doing in terms of generative AI, right? And so it's a game changer because they're starting to play with this for their data scientists. But at the moment, we don't have it. But at least I know what it is. So when it turns up, I'll be able to go, oh, that's what that is, because I've already understood what the tech is. So, so I think that those are the sort of things in terms of keeping up with the tech, and also being discerning of what tech you want to keep up with, because you may not necessarily want to keep up unless you're going to play in the AI space. You may not want to catch up so much with the AI stuff. Maybe you want to be more across what Turnitin is doing if you're about academic integrity, or maybe if it's about, you know, certain standards, you might want to keep up with that. So I also get the AACSB update each week because I care about what the deans are talking about. So it's sort of that I have a number of things and I think, what do I want to know? And then if I pick up something new, something has to go because it's only this big in the plate. Yeah? Can't just keep doing this. And also I'm a user of AI. I'm never going to build my own. I don't have the skills. It would be not valued or rewarded in my job. So my job is to understand what it can do and what it can't do. I don't have to worry about what it's building or not. I just need to understand what it can do and what it can't do and how to use it, and the conversations around things like assessment integrity, etc. So I don't know. What's your thoughts, Dewa? Sorry, I know you're having lunch. Do you want to pass or? But does that sort of make sense to other people?
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And apologies, this is my first time in this group, and I really enjoyed the conversation. And thanks, Lynn. That was really interesting because I started using that, approach to being informed, and I followed a few, important people and the newsletters and things. But then I dropped that habit a while back, and I think now with the new issues that we are experiencing, especially with AI, it might be good to kind of like go back to that. But I think for me, the issue is I'm not sure what to follow. And I think the people who are more kind of like in this area, they might have resources that they know. So for example, you know what is useful, what's not useful from experience. So I would love to have that kind of like curated set of resources.
I think that the problem is we can't get a curated set of resources because it changes all the time. And I think that and the algorithm is good. So once you get a few that are happening, the algorithm will feed you more. But I think that I have a fairly large social media profile, and people say, how do you do that? I say, my first step of the day, clear my email, do my socials. Sometimes I do my socials before I clear my email. Do my socials, do my email, and then I bank all my reading stuff. And when I go, I'm a bit overwhelmed with everything else I'm doing, I go, I'll just read that. And then I file. And it's lovely to watch that inbox go from, 150 down to 100, because it was just stuff that I just needed to go, is there anything relevant or not? So, but I think that let the algorithm feed it, as you subscribe and as you like and so you have to be active in your engagement with it so that the algorithm can feed it. Otherwise, you're having to do all the work. And again, AI will do it all for you.
But I think Dewa actually just raises a really good point, and Lynn, you do as well. And that is that it would be useful to see what our business educators are actually using. What are they actually connecting to? And to kind of do something like the Padlet that we've got going at the moment, but just to see what are the kind of key things that you, like yourself, just said that there are certain things that you do, so that, somebody that's in economics will, if they're a new academic, might think, oh, that's something I haven't even looked at or considered. Just to do that, like a snapshot once every 6 months and just be able to have that available, I think would be really, really useful, because I myself have been an academic for 20 years and like you say, Lynn, it's constantly changing, but we all had to start somewhere. And sometimes you don't know where that start is at all. So yeah, I think that might be something that might be useful, and it's something we could, you know, all sort of engage with, but we could also even do a little presentation of something like that, Dewa, if you're interested in it towards the end at the Escalate 2024 conference. It might be something that, you know, you yourself then say, look, this was my issue and my problem, and this is how I've actually seen how other academics are actually getting around this, that kind of thing. Nikki, I hope that was useful. I just saw the connection there that I thought might be good with Lena, and she's amazing and lovely. So I hope you find that useful.
Thank you for that.
No worries at all.
And so I suppose then the next question is, as Sandy raised off the Padlet, is AI, and was it AI and assessment, Sandy? Sorry.
Yeah, new issues with assessment and AI. Yeah.
So I think so. Last week I was at the parliamentary inquiry into higher education and AI and integrity on behalf of the Australasian Academic Integrity Network, with some colleagues, and we were the last presentation to be heard by the Hansard hearing. And you know, and you go, I don't know if that's the good straw or the short straw, but we were definitely giving them quite a different view. And I was interested, Dewa, to see Danny talking about lane 1 and lane 2 assessments, you know, in his post this week on LinkedIn. But I think it's actually even a bigger question than lane 1 and lane 2. And I think we need to go back to basics, which can be really difficult to do that sort of, what is it we're really assessing? And so I teach a lot of international students who are so used to just regurgitating information, right? And when I say to them, I'm not interested in you telling me anything I can read or something I can look up now. I'm interested in how you can creatively use that or innovatively use that or apply it to a problem to show me some understanding. And they go, oh, right? And that's a game changer. So fortunately, in the next, I know that the first chapter that we wrote about mapping what is your course and what are you assessing both have been accepted, but I'm gathering this one's gone to print this week because my ORCID turned up and went, you've got a new publication. And I went, well, not quite yet, but, you know, and the other one's just been accepted this week on the challenges that we face. So they'll both be out in the next month, I would assume. But if you can really sit down and say, what are the PLOs? Or the CLOs, and really sort of, so your course learning and your program learning outcomes, and then sort of ask, is this assessment really going to assess that? You know, so one of ours was definitely for them to be able to communicate. And we've got an assignment now where they actually have to do it in track changes. So they have to, we don't care if they write it in AI because that horse is bolted, but they have to be able to write sort of all these, you know, I changed it because it was too wordy, it was not succinct, it was, you know, this, that, and the other. So I think, you know, thinking creatively about what I wanted them to do made a little bit of work at the front, but it's really been a game changer as we go live. And I've always been honest about the use of tech in my classes, but when I told the kids that we would know their IP addresses if they shared this outside, the look of horror and the change in behavior was audible. So I think, you know, we can afford to be upfront about what the technology gives us, because the students think that we don't know. I mean, the classic was this week, and Sandra and Andrea both know this, but I have a close to 20-year-old who teaches 7 to 10-year-olds. And she turned up this week and they said, we're going to write in ChatGPT and you'll never know. And she said, oh, no. And they said, you'll never know. How would you know? And she said, oh, my mum spends a bit of time in this space and I'm pretty comfortable in this space and I'll know. And so she used that as her foil. and she's had not one of them turn up and give her rubbish because they believe that she will detect it. So they're not prepared to risk it. So it's that sort of panopticon. It's it's what Foucault wrote about in Panopticon, about if we believe we're being observed, we'll behave as if we're being observed. If we believe we're not being observed, we'll believe we'll get away with it. So I think it's time for us to be really upfront, and I've just sent out all those emails, and I expected a flood of emails about, but no, I was there, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, no, 3. I was there, but I didn't log on or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, if that's what you want to tell me, But from 500 emails, we're on the money. So, but what have you been doing about AI and assessments, or you haven't yet, or you're still grappling with it, Nikki? What are you doing?
So we teach, apart from accounting information systems, also like our business reporting unit in our Bachelor of Business. So we've tried some formative activities with ChatGPT in the workshops, because the main assessment there is a reflection. So I put that under collaboration. So I don't teach that unit this semester. I teach it again next semester. So, and also only recently, like in last year, got involved in that unit. So we're trying to rethink how we can sort of combine the group assessment, because I believe in the benefit of personal reflection, but that's really open to the generative AI tools for misuse. So how can we actually work alongside? So I was just sending now to our the girl that works with me on the project with the track changes, because we use Cadmus as a platform. It would be actually nice if they can actually in Cadmus write it, but show the track changes. So I just left a question with her to follow up on that.
Nikki, we did
how they can work with the
so Nikki, we did 2 things that might be useful. We used wikis, so we could see if they were changing, but we also told every one of our students that they should write in their MS Office online software or a Google Doc, because they could be called upon at any time to show us the development of the work.
Okay. So we use Microsoft environment, so that would be nice, because then it sits sort of that OneDrive.
Yeah, but then that way you can go back and see, and you can they just share it with you, and you say, just show me all the, and you just open it, just says, I can see, and you can look at each version.
Yeah, because I like using ChatGPT for brainstorming and for for myself too. So I don't mind them using it. It's just helping them to learn how to use it, in a healthy way.
So I've just written an assignment for my business communication students for this semester. So what we generally do with them is their major assessment is to write a communication policy. So what I do is I get them to identify an issue. Last year I gave them a couple of videos to look at as to what the communication issues are. We center it around 3 different topics that are at the end of the study period: conflict management, negotiation, and customer service communication. And so they have a video. This year they're actually going to, in class, identify their own issue to talk about. And then based on the theory that they know about those topics and the issue that they've got, they're going to write a communication policy for that organisation. What I'm going to get them to do this year is I want ChatGPT to write the first draft of the communication policy. And then rather than them tell me at the end the issues around the recommendations for implementation for the organisation of the policy, I'm going to get them to reflect on their edits of the communication policy, what ChatGPT gave them compared to what they've actually ended up with. And they have to put the ChatGPT version in the appendix of the document. It doesn't count towards word count, neither actually does their edited version. So the word count is all based around their thoughts. So their summary of the issue, their understanding of the theory related to the issues, and then their reflection on using generative AI. And they don't have to use ChatGPT. They can use any Gen AI software that they have access to. But they have to give me the draft in the appendix. They have to submit an edited version that they've changed based so that it's more towards the organisation rather than just the generic thing that Gen AI is going to give them. And then they need to reflect on how Gen AI helped them, but what they still needed to do personally. So that's my assessment for communication, for major assessment for communication this year. It's worth about 40% of their overall grade.
So I added another one now following, Sandra, your comment, equitable access to Gen AI tools. So that's another topic that we currently are covering in the business school, is when we give them an assignment where we expect them to give ChatGPT output, you have affluent students who can afford paying for ChatGPT, and then you've got students that can struggle just accessing the internet from home. And so how, when we give it as part of the assessment, how to ensure that it's actually equitable. Now I know in the end, your assessment is the reflection. It's not really using that, but that's another question that we're sort of grappling with at the moment, is if we bring it into the assessment sort of area, how do we ensure that it's actually equitable?
I think that the really big challenge is that until anybody, so Arizona State's the only university that's actually done ChatGPT in its own wrapper. Everywhere else is using, of course, various versions of, free software or, integrated through Microsoft, etc. And we know they're not as good. That's why it's really interesting what IBM is working on now. Really super, super interesting, because they may be the first one that actually has a different programming that changes everything because what it will do is it will not only retrieve data, but it will retrieve the source. And there's some really good explanations of, it's a bit, I loved the explanation that was given by IBM. You say to me, Lynn, what is, and this was not my explanation, they used it, right? Like, what is the planet with the most suns? And I say Jupiter, right? Because I think that's it from what I learned a long time ago. But I give you no source, and that's actually incorrect, right? And I'm not an astrobiologist or an astrophysicist, so of course I wouldn't know, right? If I quantified that and said, well, when I went to school, which is a long time ago, we thought it was Jupiter, but we don't know. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. Different. But ChatGPT and all the GPTs at the moment don't do that. They just say Jupiter because it was fed on data. It was Jupiter. Apparently it's Saturn, right? Which is 118, according to this video I watched. But if we actually went and asked a credible source, NASA, if we said, just a minute, I'll look it up. We said, oh, NASA says it's Saturn, 118. We could say NASA says it's 118. Now, somebody else might want to come and debate that, but the NASA says is actually accurate for at one point in time, right? So the new GPTs will actually go and say, you can sort of say, find a credible source or go to NASA and answer this. And it will come back and says, NASA says that it's Saturn at 118, right? And then you can write, according to NASA, the planet with the most moons is Saturn, right? And that's A, now source-driven. B, it's credible source-driven. C, we know when it was derived. But that is a completely different thing than what we've got at the moment, even with ChatGPT-4. But by the end of the year, we'll have 5, etc., etc. So I think the real issue with assessments is to move from providing information and, as Sandy said, actually critiquing what's wrong. One of the things that we told our students, which might be helpful, was you have to be honest about what work was yours or what work was the computer's, and you're responsible for it. Because if, as a manager, you tell me you did this and and you didn't tell me you used ChatGPT and something's wrong, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. If you tell me you use ChatGPT and something's wrong, and I tell you it's wrong, then you're going to be in trouble for not checking. 2 different problems. Yeah.
But you're still going to be in trouble.
You're still going to be in trouble. I've been told this week, I asked how I was feeling to my classes, and all these people said happy, happy, happy. And somebody said, I think you might be tired because you teach a lot. And it was like, I had to write back, rest assured I'm never tired. And then the other question was, somebody said I was hungry, and somebody said I was strict. And I was like, that's not how I'm feeling, but I'm strict. So, but I think those sorts of things are part of it, really grappling with the AI and assessment. And if you can get on that list, that sort of rundown AI, you'll know as those things are coming out. The other person who is really worth following is a lady by the name of Laurel Papworth. And Laurel she is like the hoodoo guru on all things. And she is definitely worth following in terms of what she has access to. I don't know if she's only, so I don't know if you can, so I'm a personal friend, so I get sort of both, if that makes sense, because I know that I get some sort of, she's a little unusual because she's creative, right? And she teaches this stuff at, the very, very top level. And so she'll often have something really, really early on, because one of her roles in the world is to actually teach metaverse virtual spaces and all of that sort of stuff. And I'm trying to find, I saved it last night and I don't have, when you go, I didn't look for it this morning and I should have. Is it in my saved? To look for my saved. But it's IBM. Actually, I can do it. I can do it while we're on the call. IBM. It's got an unusual name. I hate it when it tells me it's Watson. It's not Watson. Watson's old.
Just while you're looking for that, Lynn.
Yep.
So I know we're getting close to the end of our time together this morning, or this afternoon for those in the east, and this morning for those, very much this morning for those in the west. A couple of current events are listed there, and I think what we'll do is we'll take them back to the steering group and look at making them topics for our upcoming webinars. So one is equitable access to Gen AI tools, and the other one is ethical use of Gen AI. And I think they're both really useful topics. I think we'll get people coming to those webinars that aren't necessarily from the Business Ed SIG or arena. I think everybody's just looking for webinars on Gen AI. So we'll certainly add those to the list. The collaboration reflective assessment in business education in the era of Gen AI. I'm assuming that was you, Nikki, after your discussion around reflective assessment. And I'd love to have a chat with you about stuff we can do around that. And I'm sure Lynn would be in on that as well, in terms of looking at something we'd like to work on as a collective, and it would be nice to get an East, Central and West point of view on what's happening in that arena. Lynn, are you doing any reflective assessment stuff?
Yes, I am.
Yep. So that, I mean, so am I in both my courses for this
And
semester. So
I think that the really interesting thing is there's some really good stuff coming out about the sort of words that GPT uses that sort of gives away that GPT wrote it. And it is that whole, having just done these little sort of 10-minute, it's called a 10-minute debrief. They do it in class. And I said to them, if you use AI, it will get 0. And it was so blatant, those that had used AI. And so I just asterisked it and went Gen AI, possible Gen AI, and they'll get a 0. And I'll tell them that today in the feedback. So I think, but there's nothing that's AI proof. Look, cheating's been around, since Adam was a boy, as they say. And I think that the thing for us is to actually worry less about that and sort of come to that point of, what is it we're trying to measure, and have they really done that? I mean, I've gone tech-free in all my workshops this term. Put your computers away, put your phones away. And everybody said, we'll get so much pushback. I said, I don't think we will. And so I did it all as you're in my class. I want you to be successful. There are participation marks. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to get 8 out of 10. But if you've got your phone out and you're trying to type in a translation or do something, then it's going to be a big fat 0. And I don't want to hear any tears about it. Twice so I've only had 2 tutorial classes. I teach big classes, but only twice, so 2 individual people, have I had to go up to and say, excuse me? And both times they've gone, and I said, I don't mind. It's just a 0 in my class. And they put it away, and there was not, and 2 came up and said, I'm really sorry, blah, blah, blah. So I think there's the time for us. Idewa, thanks for coming. I think there's the time also for us to be really clear that, if we're doing a tutorial and they don't need their laptops, they don't need their laptops. Close them up and write, or listen, or do the activity. So I think we've got to sort of bring them back into the classroom and retrain this generation to get out from behind their screens too.
excellent.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
So was it a useful conversation for you, Nikki, today?
Absolutely, no. And
Right.
it's just, even like your comment about the tech-free sort of workshop, it's good to create those spaces for them too. So that's another sort of comment that I'm typing here on the side.
Yes, I'm thinking about my first workshop with 30 odd students in a couple of weeks' time, and I'm actually going to take paper and pen to class. Like, I'm going to take a box of pens because I know they won't have one, and I'm going to take paper because I know they won't have it, and I'm going to pass it out and say, right, for the next 5 minutes, I want you to write and put your name on it, and then I get a sample of their writing. Sample of their off the top of the writing. It also then gets filed away so I can compare it to their assessment writing and their language ability. It's a really, really useful task to do. I haven't done it before. I've always had them just write little notes or sticky notes or stuff, but I'm actually going to take A4 pieces of paper this time, just as something different. And I'm going to get them to write, because I teach a course in decision making. That's the other course I teach. And that's the one I'll be doing the workshops for. I'm actually going to get them to write down the biggest problem they'd encountered in the last week. Doesn't matter what it is. And three potential solutions to how to fix it. Because I want to get them started thinking about problems and how to identify potential solutions, because that's the first half of the theory in the course. So yeah, it's a really interesting concept, and then I get to do it with pass it on to my external tutor, who I thank God has come back to me just to do my externals this year, because otherwise I would have been way over my workload. Nikki, just quickly.
I found it.
She's found what she was looking for.
No, keep talking.
Oh, okay. Nikki, and I'll stop the recording in a second, but I just Googled you to get your email address, And on the UWA website, there's no @ symbol or and there's missing full stops in your email
yeah.
address. So I'll so yeah. So just giving you an update that your organisation, whoever puts the email addresses in there, needs to work on that. I mean, I've been able to.
Mine's
copy.
correct on my screen.
No, this is in the profile. So I Googled you.
Yeah.
And I've got Nikki Schoenfeld UWA.
Yeah.
.edu, no.au.
Oh, mine shows correctly. So I'll have to. Do you want to put in that link maybe that I just?
I'll put the link in the chat so that you can.
That would be interesting.
It may not be your old profiles.
I used this one. I used the research repository. Which
so did I.
Yeah.
And on my screen, there's no @ symbol, and there's no full stop between edu and au.
Oh, I think it's your screen only.
Oh, well, there you go. Because
thank you in any case.
Well, I can show you just so that you know that I'm not pulling your chain. See there? No @ symbol and no full stop.
Yeah.
So when I went to copy it, it didn't have the.
It is. Yeah, I'm seeing it fine on my end. So that's weird. I wonder what they've got.
Very weird.
Yeah. So that I'm using Google Chrome as my browser. So just so you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, fixed. Now, Lynn, you found the link. No,
but I promise I'll share it. It was late and in fairness, this is my first week of doing till 7 on Tuesday, till 7:30 on Wednesday, and 9 p.m. last night.
Yes. Yeah, it's a bit, you needed the care this morning and completely understand that.
So big apologies,
The rest of us don't start teaching for another week and a half, so.
Oh, and because I had committed to doing all this care, like we do a lot of care pedagogy through these nudges. And I've got a very small class, but they were misbehaving. They were, signing themselves up in groups of 4. It was like, can't you count to 3? Why haven't you signed yourselves? I said, I've been doing this for 5 years. You are the first class. I've been teaching for 20, but for 5 years I've used this process. You're the first class that hasn't been able to organize yourselves into a group. What is the problem?
Oh dear. All right, well, I'm going to sign off. Stay tuned for the next session, and we will definitely be taking on board, and we'll be publicising the Padlet. The Padlet will stay open, so if there's any other people around that are in the Business Ed SIG or should be in the Business Ed SIG, send them through and to the Padlet link and get their ideas on there, and we can set up some good sessions for the year to come.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great weekend.